not in your head anymore. Okay. Are you comfortable to see the slides from over there? Because a lot of my content today is going to be based on the slides, so I want to make sure you're okay. You guys are going to be just fine. These guys. Which one? Okay. Someone else please switch off the light. Thank you. So today's session is called the Toastmaster of the Day ABCD. It's based heavily on the successful club series. You can switch off anything other than the presentation.
No, light please. Light, yeah. That light you have to off.
Take that light off.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay. Alright, fantastic. So it's based on a successful club series. There's one presentation called Meeting Roles and Responsibilities. It's based on that, but we modified very heavily based on my own experience. I love the role of Toastmaster today, and I think it gives you a lot of challenges and also a lot of lessons that you learn out of it. So before we go into the day, before we go into the session, let's give a big round of applause for the Tmod of today. We think of the role of Toastmaster of the day as just something that's done at the meeting, but actually the skills we learn here apply to if you run a meeting at your own office, if you were the MC for an event, even at a dinner table, some of these skills will come into play. And I have been doing a lot of these things from Tmod. I went on to MC events. Also very useful tip, if you're still single, you can MC a lot of weddings. FYI, it doesn't help you even after you do a good job. And from that on, these are lessons that I'm going to share with you from all of these experiences. And I do have ground rules. The SAA started with 2 ground rules. No phones and no movement. I have 2 ground rules. Yes, phones, but only to take photos of me. And 2, yes, movement, but only one movement, which we will all practice together, and that's this movement. Can we? Yes. Okay, great. Come on, everybody. Okay, this is what... No, keep it up. No. Keep it up. This is what you do whenever you have a question. Okay? There are very varied, thank you, there is a very varied set of experience in this room today. So a lot of you will have things to add on to whatever I say. A lot of you may be lost about what I'm saying. So anytime you want to do either of these things, please, come on, there we go. Anytime you have either of these things, please go ahead and do that. Amazing. Now, the very last bit is not just because of time, but also to cover a lot of things and to give you a variety. I will go very, very quickly. You don't have to take notes. Just let me know at the end of the presentation if you want the slides, and I will be more than happy to send it over to you. Okay? Great. What does the Toastmaster of the Day do? Let's set the basis. We know what a Toastmaster of the Day does. We saw a fantastic Toastmaster of the Day today. But according to Toastmaster International, the Toastmaster of the Day is the meeting's director and host. Simple enough. What does that mean? That means that person is responsible to make sure the meeting runs smoothly and everybody is introduced. Again, what does that mean? That's where I present to you the Toastmaster of the Day, ABCD. The Toastmaster of the Day, ABCD, big block red letters. I hope you're as excited as I am, and you want to know exactly what it is. But before we do that, 2 questions that I'm going to ask you. Why be a Toastmaster of the Day?
You want to be in the limelight.
Want to be in the limelight? And if you can do really well, you get 30 minutes of it. What else?
You want to actually manage the entire meeting.
You get to manage an entire meeting, which brings out multiple other skills than just speaking.
Get to know the speakers and people, members of the club.
Absolutely. A Toastmaster of the Day builds relationships with each member.
Convey message.
Convey a message as well. Anything? Yes?
Get a perk at the end of the meeting.
Get perk at the end of the meeting. You are forgetting also that you will get something marked off your completed leadership manual. So lots of perks involved.
Yes.
Okay. So Toastmaster International again gives us 3 things. It says, Toastmaster of the Day builds multiple skills. Number 1, organizational skills. You organize the meeting. 2, management skills. You get to know people and you're also managing things. Today we had a lot of changes to the agenda and it was managed by the Toastmaster of the Day. And finally, public speaking skills as well. It's a very different ballgame than a completely prepared speech because things change and you deal with it. That was question 1. Question 2, and the last one. What makes a Toastmaster of the day successful? When will you say the Toastmaster of the day did a great job? And if you don't want to think of Toastmaster of the day, think of an MC for an event, or someone who ran the IFA awards, whatever. When will you think they did a great job?
Connect with the audience.
Connect with the audience.
Speakers become very comfortable.
Speakers are very comfortable. Connect with the audience.
We keep the audience interested.
Keep the audience interested.
Humor.
Humor.
Engage the audience and the audience should enjoy end of the day.
Engage the audience. Enjoy.
Meetings organized properly.
Meetings organized properly. We're looking for one more along those lines.
So all the events should look like well connected.
Well connected. Fantastic.
Audience applause.
Audience applause. Fantastic. Okay, let's go. We're pretty much there. These are my 3 reasons of what makes a Toastmaster of the day successful, and we're going to use these 3 throughout the presentation. Number 1, make the speakers comfortable. Absolutely agree. The speakers need to feel comfortable when they are coming up on stage. 2, putting all those audience-related things together, I say keep the audience engaged. So humor, keep the audience clapping, keep them interested, ensure they know what's going on. All of that, keep the audience engaged. And something that this club has been struggling with, the Toastmaster of the day is also responsible to ensure that the meetings run on time. It is a very challenging task, and that's one of the 3 things that I think make a Toastmaster of the day successful. Great. So, speaker comfortable, audience engaged, meeting on time. And we're going to use these as we go through the Tmod Abcd, which means it's time for the Tmod Abcd. Are you excited?
Yes.
As excited as that dog?
More than that.
Are you definitely excited about it? If you are, you're going to give me one big yell. Are you excited about Tmod Abcd?
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. And here it is, ABCD. Let's go. I can also be Dr. Evil. Alright, the Tmod Abcd. ABCD, as you guessed by now, is an acronym that I'm going to take you through, and we're going to look at each of them in the lens of those 3 success criteria. A. D. I did not think of that. Next time it's going to come another slide before this. The agenda manager. The Toastmaster of the day manages the agenda to ensure things that are running through, etc. Yeah? B. Builds around a theme. There's a theme, the theme can help and keep people engaged around that theme. C, as someone pointed out very correctly, connects all aspects of the meeting, makes it smooth. And lastly, it's the director of energy. The Toastmaster of the day can decide what energy he wants or she wants in the room and can work around it. Great. And when we do each of them, we're going to look at the 3 success criteria. I'm sorry you can't see it, but it's the same 3 things. Make the speaker comfortable, keep the audience engaged, and the meeting runs on time. As we look at each one, we will see how it contributes to the success criteria. Awesome. Let's jump to the first one, which is the agenda manager. And obviously, we all know how to follow the agenda. Right? We know this is the order, we do this. So let's take a little bit step further in. This is last meeting's agenda. What I'm going to look at is how do we help keep the meeting on time. And this is where I want to point out how a Toastmaster of the day can find the buffer areas that he or she can speak in and out of. Right? So the agenda is pretty much ordered. The 3 red boxes are the end times for each of these 3 segments. Right? Nothing complicated here. Now what I'm going to do further than that is I'm going to then work backwards. So the general evaluator introduces the role players has to finish, according to this, at 2:55, which means the step above should finish by 2:50. And you just keep working backwards. The step above has to finish by 2:40, and the step above has to finish by 2:35. Same thing. When it comes to speech, it's a little more complicated. You don't put it on the agenda because this allows flexibility to the Toastmaster of the day, but the Toastmaster of the day has to be aware of this. So, 3:35, timer's report has to be finished. Give the timer 5 minutes to finish the voting, etc. Previous speaker should have finished at 3:30. That was a 10-minute speech. Finish again at 3:20. That was a 7-minute speech. I don't want to do too much maths. Let's give it 10 minutes. Finish at 3:10. Then another 7-minute speech between 2:55 and 3:10. Let's make it 7 minutes. 3:03. Right? I finished populating the agenda by time. Now I need to find the spots that I, as a Toastmaster of the day, can speak. Obviously, there's one spot already given to us. That's the 10-minute slot they've given us. The other slot that I can see from this agenda is the slot between 3:10 and 3:20, where there's a 7-minute speech and there's a 10-minute slot. And these are the buffer zones that I have as a Toastmaster of the day. I can either speak for 10 minutes up front, or I can speak for less, keep that time in my back pocket, and spread it throughout the meeting. That's assuming that the other speakers don't go over time. Right? Okay, any questions so far? Wonderful sign. This, of course, is going straight to the last success criteria, keeping the meeting on time. Sometimes when we are running early, we do err on the side of starting to speak more, but be aware of what's coming up later, because that might be eating on time. So just the second bit of the agenda manager is the introduction, which is popularly called the poet's introduction, which is created first by William Shakespeare. Some of you got it, some of you didn't. So poets is just an acronym. William Shakespeare has nothing to do with it. I don't even think he's a poet. Poets is an acronym, and POETTS, and again, we can all go home or we can go into the details. The POETTS is just an easy way for a Toastmaster of the day to remember what or how he introduces a speaker. The POET is the first bit we look at. P is the project. O, the objectives, the evaluator, and the timing. To put it into words, put it into an example. The next project is Advanced Communicator 2 from Specialty Projects Manual. And can I invite the evaluator to read out the objectives? And then Kevin would have gotten up, read out the objectives. Thank you, Kevin. Toastmaster Kevin was the evaluator and will be coming back later. This timing sequence for this project is 8 to 10 minutes, and further to that, we have 3 to 5 minutes for the question and answer. So we can remember that in that sequence and we run through it. Now, why do we do this? I say keep the audience engaged. But what I really mean is that giving the audience a context of what the speech is about and why that speaker is speaking today is very important. Now, it's POET here, but if you're running a meeting, it's the same thing. If you're introducing someone into a meeting for a presentation, give the audience context of what and why they're here. What is their objective? Right? It's the same thing. Now, that's the first bit. The T and S is the next bit. The title and the speaker. We've come all the way here. We then introduce the speech's title, and finally we introduce the speaker. Why in this particular order? It's just good because it became a nice acronym. We'll just do one all the way front to back, yeah? The next project is Impromptu Project 2 by Toastmaster Kevin, who is speaking from the impromptu manual. Can I invite the evaluator to read out the impromptu objectives? Thank you, Toastmasters Summit, for reading out those objectives. The timing sequence is 5 to 7 minutes. The next speaker's title is Udli Kanchan, and he is a doctor who is always picking up on Hobson's choice and always up on stage. The next speaker is Toastmaster Kevin. That's the flow, front to back. Yeah. Now, and again, the last bit that we're doing is for a reason. We make the speaker comfortable. By discussing and knowing an introduction, I am building your expectation of that speaker, and I am building that speaker's confidence about himself. And therefore, the speaker is comfortable, a little bit more comfortable than he might have been a little while earlier, I hope. And will come up on stage and speak. We'll go into the details of the speaker bit just a little bit more. There's some nuances here that I want to go through. It's not a rule, just a couple of nuances that might help you. The speaker's name. When will you mention the speaker's name?
After the objectives.
After the objectives, after the introduction.
I think all the introduction and the last sentence should tell that speaker's name.
That is my favorite approach. I always want to keep the speaker's name to the end. And think of it like a talk show. The next person has grown multi-million companies, is the founder of XYZ, sits on the board of ABCD. Let's all put our hands together and welcome. Right? And putting the speaker's name at the very end does two things. It cues the speaker to walk up and has built the energy up to the speaker's name. The speaker is now special. One other thing is to pre-discuss your introductions with the speaker if at all possible. We work, it's a little difficult to get everybody's time, but if possible, speak to the speaker before the meeting and get an introduction from them on the phone. Why? One, you've built the relationship like Amit said. Two, because you built the relationship, the speaker is going to be comfortable and the introduction has been discussed. That means the speaker is aware of what he's going to hear before he needs to speak. Subconsciously, he's prepared. And lastly, when you ask people to type something out, they don't give you anything interesting. If you ask them specific questions, they tell you something interesting and it makes a good introduction. And the last bit after the introduction is, of course, the handshake. Again, this also makes the speaker comfortable. This is body touch, right? It makes the person feel comfortable. And this is where the handshake comes in. Please look at the speaker coming up in the eyes and smile, make them feel comfortable, let them get settled on the stage, and then walk out. Don't be in a hurry. It's all fine. Great. So that's the A. And this was the longest segment of the ABCD. We're going to go into the next segments. The B. Build around the team. I'm not going to go into too much depth, but I'm going to give you one metaphor that's going to help you build a Toastmaster of the Day script around a team. Essentially, building around a theme is like a mega serial. You give the audience a little bit, and then you go away, and then you come back, give them a little bit more, then you go away, come back, give them a little bit more. If the TRP ratings is high, you give them more. If it's not, you cut your losses and go home. Right? As simple as that. Of course, in that, it's the same body, it's the same thing, introduce, build, and close, right? Introduction is your first bit. Introduce with some sort of a dilemma. Here, what's the difference between a manager and a leader? Last meeting, how do you separate the bull from the ship? Introduce a dilemma, introduce a question if possible, and then build that question through the meeting and close with something to do with that question. You can close with a thought, you can close with happiness, you can close with anything, but just have a purpose. Right? Like I see the approach, someone's got to slap someone, and at the end something happens. You have an ending. Yes? Now that's the building around the theme. Why do we do it? Of course, to keep the audience engaged. And this goes for even your meetings. A meeting you're running at work, don't have a purpose for the entire meeting. Everybody segments to that meeting, but connect everything and have a purpose to it. And build that purpose through the meeting. Very important. Some other little bits that are more specific to Toastmasters, adding more spice along with your theme. Simple tips that you've seen multiple times. Number one, try to get the general evaluator and the table topic master to align with your theme if at all possible. Last meeting we saw the table topic master aligned with the theme. It was about calling bullshit on speakers. Great. Can you get the evaluators to also align? If your theme is say football, great. The Toastmaster of the Day is the commentator. The general evaluator is the match referee. The speech evaluators are the linesmen, whatever it might be, right? You can align all the roles with the theme of the day. Two, of course, you can have introductions based on the theme as well. We had that in the last meeting. Very simple to do. And the last bit, which is very important tip. Very often you see these MCs come up on stage and crack a joke about the previous thing someone said. And you're like, wow, how did he think of this joke on the spot? He prepared. You know the speakers are going to speak. You know their speech titles. You know, just because you're part of the club, you know what they generally talk about. And you know what they've spoken about in the past. With all this together, you can definitely create jokes. You may not use them, but create them and keep them. If you know that he's going to be speaking, create a joke about Sambar, right? A lot of people know the relevance. If you know he's going to be speaking, create a joke about, there we go. Very simple. Create it and keep it in your back pocket and align these jokes with your theme if at all possible. And if the time permits, use it, right? Why do we do this again? Again, keep the audience engaged. Having the full team, all fully aligned, keeps us all entertained. The C, connect all aspects of the meeting. What do I mean? The meeting is a lot of small islands, right? There's like president's address, then there's a speech about fear in Toastmasters, then there's a speech about medicine, then there's table topics. It's a lot of small islands, and the audience can get lost. And as a Toastmaster today, it's our responsibility to connect all of these islands together. And so, instead of just telling you that you should do this, I'm going to take you through the islands. These are the various islands that I see. And we'll look at what we can do to connect each of these islands, one at a time. Okay? If it doesn't make sense after the first one, it will make a lot of sense. And then you want to apply the same thing to any meeting you run. And when we do that, we're going to look at it as an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So takeoff, journey, and prop. The first role, the SAA president. President finishes his address, and the next person who's going to come on stage is the general evaluator. Now what's the Toastmaster today going to do? President just handed over. What do you do?
Introduce the general.
The president just handed over to you. First thing, shake his hands, thank the president, and then you go and give your opening remarks. You've taken off now, you've thanked the president, you've taken off. Now it's your time. It's your time in the air. It's your time in the limelight. Go ahead, finish your opening remarks. Whatever you want to introduce the theme, create the mega serial. And then you're going to land. The landing is going to go to the general evaluators. Now, you introduce the importance of evaluation, or you say why evaluation helped you grow, how evaluation made you a better leader, in this case would be a perfect landing, and then introduce the general evaluator. You get what we're doing? We'll go through the rest much faster. It's important to take off in the air and land. So, from the general evaluator finishes, and then going to hand back to you, and you're going to go to the first speaker now. Take off. Thank the general evaluator or the team. Very easy to do. Use the word of the day immediately when you come on stage, right after the general evaluator. You can prepare, of course. Wonderful takeoff. And then introduce why we have prepared speeches, maybe. Or something else you want to say. But one example is introduce prepared speeches, the concept of it. And finally, introduce the first speaker. Awesome? Next, speaker's gone off stage. We acknowledge the speaker. When we acknowledge the speaker, we're not giving them feedback. We're just telling them, thanks for sharing that, if it was a moving message. If we learned something, we say what we learned. If they're telling us to try something, we say we'll try it. Whatever the speech asked you to do, acknowledge that. After acknowledging the speaker, whatever you want to say, of course in this club we stop for a minute to give feedback to the speaker, so the second bullet is not acknowledge speaker feedback, but acknowledge speaker and then stop to give feedback. The pink slips. If you want to give feedback to me as well, use the pink slips. The body in the air now is whatever you want to say. I underline it because it's optional. If you're running short of time, you can cut it out. If you're not, you can build your theme further. And then introduce the next speaker, land it to the next speaker. Take off again after the last speaker, acknowledge the speaker, wait for feedback, and then call for the timer's report. The timer gives the report, we go into voting, which is a takeoff again, and then again whatever you want to say. And finally, land back into the table topics. Introduce what table topics is, or say something about table topics and the table topic master, and then hand over to the table topic master. Back out of the table topics. Acknowledge the table topic master, very simple to do again. Timer's report, same thing, timer's report, voting. Now it's back at our time in the air. We say whatever we want to say. And finally, we introduce the general evaluator. Of course, the break can come somewhere in between all of this. The general evaluator runs the rest of the meeting and you're back up on stage. Take off again from the general evaluator. Thank them. Mention what you learned as a positive reinforcement of acknowledging their role. And then your closing remarks. Wish the audience well. Say whatever you learned from the meeting and hand it back to the president. And with that sort of a theme and thinking, you can connect every island in the meeting. Of course, it takes a lot of repetition. Great. The yellow bits are the bits that are up to you, and these are the yellow bits that you will build your theme in. And the yellow bits are also how you control the meeting time. This is where you can stretch it or not. Awesome. Of course, you can get this slide later. Well, why do we do this? Two things. Keeping the audience engaged, connecting the entire meeting keeps us engaged, and two, we keep the meeting running on time. This is not just about Toastmasters and Toastmaster the day at Toastmaster. This really does apply to any meeting, any MC, anything you do. This is the fundamentals. You want to do this all of the time. Even if you're having a dinner with 6 new people, you want to think of it like this. Right? Hey, Manoj, have you met Amit? Amit, so I said, Amit will start talking, and then good. Now why don't we go for buffet? Connected, keep going, right? That's what we do. We come to the last bit, Director of Energy, the D. Again, I'm not going to go into the depth, but instead I'm going to ask you a question. Whoa, all right, I'm not supposed to ask you all of them. So let's just look at the first one. What type of a meeting is a Toastmaster meeting? Well, if it was a movie, what type of a movie is it? What genre is it? It's a drama, okay? It's your own answer. Whatever, when you are the Toastmaster of the day, it might be anything for you. If Prabhu is running it, it's probably a comedy.
Motivational.
It's motivational. It can be anything. What else?
Thriller.
It's a thriller. Thriller. Okay, great. Now, in a motivational or a thriller or a drama or a comedy, if there is a sad scene somewhere through that, because you don't control the scenes here, if there's a sad scene in the middle of a motivational story, what do you do? If you were the director of your motivational story, motivational movie, and there's a sad scene suddenly for some reason. Now, after the sad scene, what next?
The energy level is increased to take up the fancy.
Correct. You need to increase it in some way. And that's what a Toastmaster of the day does. Suppose there's a very moving speech and you think of your Toastmaster meeting as a happy and motivational thing. You cannot tell the speaker not to speak. That was their objective. Now what do? Is you build the energy back up. And that's the thinking about director of energy. Second question, when should we have the intermission? Halfway through, sometime when there's a suspense, right?
Yeah.
We did it great today. We moved things around, but we put the slide up and we said suspense. We'll come back after the break. And you can decide when you want to put it. Just think of it as a movie and what energy you're bringing out in that movie, and you can answer these questions. Last, what type of an ending to a motivational movie?
So take that.
Correct. So if you're a Toastmaster of the day, that's exactly what you got to do. What about a drama? What's the ending to a drama? Happy ending? Great. If you want a sad ending, you can do that too. If you want a thoughtful, philosophical ending, you can do that too. But think of your meeting as what genre of movie it is, and you can answer these questions very well. As a Toastmaster of the day, keeping the energy at the level you want is important, and we all know to do it. We're just not conscious about it. And so just think about it as a larger movie, and you will do it. Of course, we've watched enough movies to know this stuff. Wonderful. So we've come to the end, and the reason we do that is two things. One, keep the speaker comfortable and keep the audience engaged. Audience engaged, I know you already understand. Speaker comfortable because if the energy is very low, the speaker coming up will be lost. That's the reason to do all that. Going to the summary, that was the ABCD. We looked at the agenda manager, how you find the slots that you can speak in. And we looked at the poet's introduction that William Shakespeare famously wrote. We built the meeting around the theme. We connect all aspects of the meeting with the takeoff in the air and the landing, and we finally direct the energy of our movie the way we want it. And all of these contribute to the 3 success criteria. We make the speakers comfortable, we keep the audience engaged, and we run the meeting on time. To do all this, as I promised, there's a lot of preparation to do. And that's why a Toastmaster of the Day job is pretty interesting. One, you want to speak to the VPE and make sure the agenda is in order. After that, you want to go and speak to each speaker, get introductions. Then you want to talk to the table topic master, the general evaluator, whatever they want to do. And finally, you're going to prepare all of it and then come there early. Great. Now, I think we have just a couple more minutes. We have time for questions. And it's a Hobson's choice of sorts, because either you ask or I will. Right, let's go to, yes?
My question is regarding the roles. So these roles are decided just before the meeting, like how am I going?
The roles are decided, like you will see at the end of this meeting. Now we call for volunteers and the roles will be decided.
For the next meeting.
For the next meeting.
Who decides the theme?
The Toastmaster of the day. I'm going to go into my questions because I think these are things you will face when you become a Toastmaster of the day, and let's discuss how we will solve them. Okay, so it's 5 case studies of what to do when. Number 1, you do not have the introduction for a speaker, or the agenda changed last minute. If you don't have the introduction for the speaker and you are the Toastmaster of the day, what would you do?
Go from your memory.
Go from your memory.
So we'll talk about something which happened recently, which I understand, I remember, I talk about that.
Okay?
Elaborating.
Tell the guy to introduce himself.
I wouldn't do that. Because again, you want to make them comfortable. So asking them to introduce themselves will defeat that purpose. So my questions will be, why do you not have the introduction in the first place?
Last minute change.
Last minute change, okay, great. You can give them a sheet VPE because he or she will know about VPEs, and presidents are generally very good at knowing a lot about the members. You can ask them. Sit next to them if you're the Tmod if you want such things. Don't pass a note all the way through. And finally, of course, make one up. Right? Great. Question 2. You prepared a lot of great content, but the meeting is running late. Happens all the time. What do? We just have to get rid of the content. There is one scenario where you might not want to. If the meeting is running late and let's say the energy is very low, you can try to take a conscious call to go, you know what, it's okay if the meeting runs late. I want to leave people on a high. And in those sort of scenarios, there may be many other such scenarios. In those sort of scenarios, you may choose the other over the time. Speaker is walking up nervously.
Crack a joke.
Crack a joke. Give a good handshake. Smile, look at that person in the eye, give a good handshake. Person still nervous, do what he did. Ask for a round of applause for the speaker. Right? Speaker's up here, handshake finished. Let's give another big round of applause for Kevin. Person delivered a very moving speech. The next speaker is coming up and he's not a very confident speaker. First speaker gave a very moving speech. Great speech. Audience is thrilled, entertained. Second speaker is not confident. And he's going to speak next. What do? Encourage. You can encourage.
Yeah. Use in the introductions, use good words profusely.
I would personally bring the energy of the meeting down. This is against everything I've told you, but because the previous speaker brought the energy so far up, the next speaker is going to bring it down. And the next speaker we just said is not confident. Okay? And to prevent that from happening, I as Toastmaster today will bring the energy of the meeting down. I will crack a bad joke. I will do something, speak for a long time, but I will bring the energy slightly down so that the next speaker can bring it at least a little bit higher. Last one, the meeting is running early.
All the time.
Extended break.
Exactly, you can do multiple things. You can have an extended break, you can have extended table topics, you can have an impromptu speaker, you can talk long time yourself, and you can also use the time to get audience feedback about certain things. So ask a question and allow more time for question time, and this happens. Okay, great. I hope that was useful. It is a very hard role to be the Toastmaster of the day, and if you want to go for it, I suggest you do. You will learn a lot from it. And this has taken a lot of time and practice, and I hope